One. There
Well,
we go.
welcome to the Life Edit Podcast. My name is Chad Nelson, and I have Kurt Nelson and Mark Belcher with me. We started this podcast because we've all recently retired. And in that process, we've realized we've spent the last 40 years building our lives. And now we're kind of starting over. And so it's time to rebuild our lives. Um, I want each one of us, you guys, to introduce ourselves. So maybe talk about who you are, maybe a little bit of your background, and when you retired. Let's start there. Kurt.
Okay, my name is Kurt Nelson. I retired in 2021 at the ripe old age of 51. So I am the, veteran of the group in retirement. Prior to that, I spent 30 years in corporate America, working mostly on continuous improvement and process improvement kind of stuff in supply chain. So a lot of years of that led me to probably some unhealthy level of trying to optimize every single little thing in my life. So that's where we are.
All right. Mark
Belch.
Belcher. I retired 6 months ago, May 1st, 2025. I'm 58 years old. Look better than that for sure. And I would say I was in technology with, like Cisco Systems, CrowdStrike, stuff like that for, I don't know, 30 years. And I just got tired of working and traveling. And, after traveling for a bunch, I was like, after COVID, when you couldn't travel, I realized there was more to life than being on an airplane and being in hotel rooms. So I really focused and buckled down, and then got to the point where I felt comfortable pulling the trigger.
Okay. My name's Chad Nelson. I retired at the beginning of 2025. I previously owned my own business for the last 25 years. We had a branding, sort of a brand strategy and marketing communications business. We served high tech companies. Um, and I am still occasionally working on projects, but for the most part, I'm retired now. And so it'll be interesting. I mean, things like AI and so forth were part of my decision making in terms of seeing that things are going to change in the next several years, and so trying to prepare for those type of things as well. But yeah, so I've been retired for basically 10 months now. Um, all right, guys. Um, So retirement isn't the story isn't ending. It's a re-edit of your story financially, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. Talk to us a little bit about where you guys stand with that. So how when you got to retirement, did you view it was just going to be vacation moving forward, or did you see yourselves um, trying to make sure that the last chapter of your life or the third stage of your life was going to be something worth living, and how did you go about that? Talk to me a little bit about where your head was and how it's evolved as you've been retired.
Well, I'll start. I mean, like Mark, I had reached a point in my career where probably 30% of my job I still really loved. I mean, working with the people and developing people in a management role, I loved. But 70% became a chore. And so when the financial part of Are You Ready for Retirement was pretty much achieved, or so I thought, we'll see, um, I elected to take a step out. And having been the one that's probably been through the most phases of retirement, to answer your question, Chad, yeah, initially it was 6 months of vacation. And then it became, there's been this kind of rhythm through it of I want no responsibilities, no schedule, no to, oh my God, I need some. And then probably erring too much on the side of filling my calendar with even mundane stuff, but just making sure there's stuff on the calendar. And so it's a work in progress for sure. And I don't think it's going to be the same as it is today a year from now. And
So
I've kind of embraced that of it can be whatever it needs to be for the next period of time. And Jed, you mentioned the third chapter. I'd like to think it's maybe the 15th of 50 chapters. There's a whole bunch more to write, and it isn't going to be all the same from where I am today until 85, 90, hopefully.
and Kurt, did you feel like that you like the vacation part of retirement? So were you frustrated with that? Like what started to push you in new directions? What's allowed you to evolve or think about retirement? Is it sort of like you know, do it, see how it goes and then adjust? I mean, is that sort of been your mantra?
Yeah, I mean, I think I started to feel like the characters in the movie Wall-E, where I was just in a recliner getting fed and getting fat, and
Brown
I
liquor and
decided maybe
cigarettes.
yes. Uh, so I decided maybe that I needed to do more than act
So when
like I
you
was
bring
an acting
sorry.
like I was an all inclusive for the rest of my life. But
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was it got like anything. It's super fun when it's a novelty, and then when it becomes your everyday, it's the fun gets drained a little bit.
Yeah, when you're watching Days of Our Lives, and that can't be good. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I've seen them all.
Right. Right. Now, Belch, you don't have that many months behind you,
No.
but I mean, you've had enough to know, like, when you're not vacationing, you're at home, and if you don't have, you know, you don't have a plan for the day. If it's just sort of like get up and see what feels right. Talk to us about how you've
Yeah, well,
experienced
so I went
retirement.
into it with first, like I said, I was just tired of crappy bosses. If any of my bosses watch this, not all of you were crappy. Um, but you know, as you
Not
get
you, the
older,
one watching.
you have so much knowledge after like 35 years, and you see the entire economy, every iteration of the flows of it. And you know, you have a 35-year-old boss saying like, "Well, you know, this is the way we see it today," and it's like, "Well, it was like that before." You know, 4 other times in my career, you know, and you
Yeah.
just get
Right.
tired of it. So I went to a guy in my last role at CrowdStrike. We had a service where you could get coaching, and you know, most people
Mm.
probably did it for alcoholism. I did it for retirement. So I had this guy, and he worked with me on my retirement, my non-financial retirement plan. So it was things like, do you want to teach finance to high school kids? Do you want to learn a language like French? Do you want to take up pickleball? Do you want to become a real estate mogul? Which I don't want to be a landlord. I've tried that. It's not fun. But you know, the one that he actually came up with is something we came up with called Mastermind, which was get a group of your retired friends and come up with cool ideas. And that's what this is to me. This podcast is my mastermind that I came up with Yosef, who worked at Microsoft. He's like 6 years older than us, retired at the same time. So like he kind of lived it, and it was pretty cool. I would say what I've seen so far is it's a lot of travel with my wife and I. You know, our kids are in their 20s, so they've kind of launched. So there's not too much to do there, and a lot of home improvement and things like that. But that's all going to play out. I mean, you can only improve your home, you know, so much, and also you'll drain your reservoir if you do it all the time. And the travel's great, and we'll continue to do that. But you do have to come up with. It's just like when you're working. You still have to have drive. You still have to have focus. You still have to have goals in life.
Yeah.
And you know, that's a big part of it. But you know, and then you know, I think I told you guys I went to the doctor and you know got a physical, and he did some blood work, and he came back and he said, "Well, you have 2 things. You have cancer and you have Alzheimer's." And I looked at him and I said, "Well, at least I don't have cancer." We should have
Oh
we should have
gosh.
a dad joke segment every week.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
definitely need it. We definitely need it. Um,
I might have Alzheimer's because I think I've heard the joke before.
yeah. Now, Belch. So okay, so you have things like this, like the podcast, but one of the things that, in my mind, that work did is you had it had some momentum and force and motivation around it. Meaning, if you didn't deliver, if you didn't focus and things like that, there was penalties to it. And obviously, as you retire, and particularly if you're non-committal to things, or you're, you sort of come into them half-baked, how do you keep your motivation going? So for like, you talked about podcasts, you talked about getting in shape, you want to travel, how do you keep a focus in those areas where there's not built-in focus that, say, a job creates?
So, a buddy of mine from Cisco, that guy named Jeff Edwards, he and I always did this thing called The Game. I don't know if you wanted me to talk briefly about that, but I can. But basically, it was always, it was a guy that we saw speak at a Cisco event, 25 years ago. And I don't think he became famous or anything, because we tried to find his book online and Kurt said his book doesn't exist. So I don't think he made it big, but this guy had a really good, it's just like Atomic Habits or anything else. You've got to change a habit, you got to stop doing it for at least 3 or 4 weeks. And to form a habit, you got to do something for a couple of weeks. So this game is like 90 days. And so Jeff and I would always just build our own game and monitor it and counsel each other and like be each other's coach. But you'd pick like 3 things, like health, work, and family. And you'd pick like a few things within each of those and try to change what you were doing on a daily basis, weekly, monthly, for 90 days, and try to form new habits. So that's what I'm doing now. Is I'm doing another one of those where, it'll be around, I'm going to make my phone is going to stay in my office. Not everybody has a wet bar in their office like me, but
so it makes it easier to keep the phone.
Great habit
so leave your phone here. It's easy. So yeah, leave my phone in my office and don't walk around the house or the yard with it. Like treat it like a landline almost. And then also to, really have to get on top of your money in retirement. And Kurt's going to talk on that. And Kurt, you've taught me a ton on just how to really approach each aspect of your financial life in retirement, which, your modeling is incredible. And I hope that, over the course of these podcasts, people will be able to discern and take away a lot of that, because it's been very meaningful to me. I feel like I'm totally on top of my game, but I'm refining it at this point, which is awesome. And that's where, creating the habit forming over the next 90 days of monitoring and valuing that. And then, I think the other one was, I got to continue to maybe take up pickleball. It's really hard you got to pick up new stuff, whether it's a language or whatever. You got to do something. So the problem with pickleball is you play against, a bunch of 80-year-olds and you dominate because you're retired early, and, but, you also are able to pick up a lot of 75-year-old chicks.
Okay. All right.
Recently widowed. But Chad, I think to answer your question, and Mark touched on it, is you got to do it yourself. There is no external force that's going to keep you accountable to keeping yourself busy and not just being the person on Wall-E sitting in the recliner.
Yeah, I think everybody had, in business, if you're especially in sales, you always had a quarter that you tried to close, and you always, so I would always, when I managed teams, I'd always be like, how are you going to hit your number? And I'd hold people accountable to what they said instead of me telling them what to do. And I think it's the same thing in retirement. You still have to have goals. You still have to say, I'm going to put on muscle mass after 50, which is really hard to do. You have to, come up with a plan for that. I mean, you have to have goals. You have to have aspirations. And you have to have hobbies that interest you. You have to have an affinity for something.
Yeah, Belch, you had mentioned that Kurt sort of is really on top of his finances, and I agree. And to me, the reason Kurt is because he actually has a ton of interest in it.
100%.
It's like it's not some new habit he's desperately trying to form in his life. He digs it. He really has a keen interest in it.
Yeah, and it's his brain type. It is totally.
I
his
agree,
brain type.
and because I agree with you that Kurt, I wouldn't be prepared financially if Kurt didn't sort of guide me through what I need to consider, how to best get health care, a lot of those kind of things, and again, I think that comes.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned on healthcare.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what we call it, tease in the business, Jeff.
Yes. Yes.
Pound subscribe if you like.
Smash that like button. Anyways, yeah. So I think yeah, Kurt's interested in it, and so hopefully each one of us. I mean, one of the great things about a friendship, and again, a lot of men do not have a ton of good friends. We've all known each other since we were kids, um, and so there is this deep friendship, and we have one of the things we do each week is we go on like a 5 mile hike together. And
Or
just in
longer.
that time, we're able to share our lives and share our interests and share our insight on different topics. And hopefully, if you do that on a regular basis, you really do take in the wisdom of your brethren. So
But I
anyway,
think all of that is a conscious effort to
yeah,
keep yourself engaged with other
Totally.
people and challenges. And I
yeah,
mean, I've gone on and off with a financial YouTube channel that, part of Mark bringing up the game has inspired me to make that one of my things. Don't take months off of it. Be accountable to every other
Mhm.
week having a release of a video, whether you think it's good or bad or whatever. The fact is, 8 people are watching it, so it doesn't matter if it sucks.
Oh, we're gonna have at least
But I
20.
appreciate you two every week showing up.
Yeah,
Every week
yeah,
that
yeah,
I produce one.
yeah. Exactly, exactly. So I'll just quickly run through my experience. As I said, I started at the beginning of 25. And I found that like there are one of the things I've really focused on is trying to get in shape, work out on a regular basis.
You can see it.
Um, what's that?
You can see it.
Well, hopefully.
You're back to
Trust me, I
fighting
need to
weight.
drop a few, but thank you.
I don't know why
Um,
you guys are so much tanner than me. That's crazy.
we work on it, Belch. It's a goal of ours.
It could be the
Um,
lack of red hair where we actually have pigment in our skin.
yeah,
No,
that's
no.
true. When you got white hair, your skin looks darker. But I think I've already noticed times in my schedule that can get boring or can get like I don't have a plan. In fact, that's another thing I've sort of been trying to do since I retired is really figure out how do I spend this time um productively and do the kind of things I would hope I would do in my life. And so I've worked really hard at that. I've spent a lot of time praying and thinking through things. But despite that, I have not come across some eye-opening moment. And so I continue on, and I do continue in my career. So I do have a couple of clients, and I do like that because it keeps my knife sharp. It keeps me attuned to what's going on in marketing and branding, and then also just as a designer. So it keeps my blade sharp in those, and so that's one of the things I'll also, along with the game, each one of us has, after Mark introduced the game to us, has sort of set up a series of goals, and I'll pursue those as well. So
A lot of people need to
I
take a
would
little
also,
blue pill to keep their blade sharp.
yes, yes,
Chad, I would also say that too often people are looking for this big cure cancer kind of
yeah,
purpose, and
right,
it doesn't need to be that. It can be a
right,
bunch of little things, and hopefully some of them help other people. But if some of them just, you know, get at what makes you happy, that's okay. You don't need to feel guilty about that.
yeah. No, I definitely agree with you that I don't think it's going to be a watershed moment. I don't think it's going to be some big writing in the sky that I'm going to see my next life's purpose or my next stage of my
Special
life's purpose,
purpose?
special purpose. So I don't think that's just going to show up. I think I have to walk in like we've talked about. There's going to be some areas in our lives that we have to step into, and some of those things are going to be uncomfortable, but we need to continue to walk in those. And I mean that's the one thing I feel as much as anything as I've retired is I find myself really disliking discomfort. Anything that sort of is going to tax me or require a lot of me, I'm resistant to. And I want to be able to face those things and step into them. And so, anyways, that's going to be definitely one of my goals is just to step into the uncomfortable at times.
Or watch more
And you can
YouTube.
tell Chad's the one that
Or-
really needs some structure by the attire. Mark's in a t-shirt, I'm in a hoodie, Chad's in a white button down.
Right.
We made him take off the jacket.
In the tie.
And the tie. Right.
The ascot.
The ascot. All those had to go. All right, boys. So let's get into into our next section. And Kurt, I want to pass this off to you, and that's going to be our finance corner, because that's going to be a part of this podcast. Is sort of looking like, as you go into retirement, one of your main concerns, unless you just have stacks and stacks of gold in the backyard, is going to be your finances. How you manage that, how you think about it, how you allow it to grow, when you should play it a little bit safer. And so we're going to walk through a lot of the financial pressures that happen as you retire, particularly when you retire young. And so, Kurt, I'm going to hand it off to you.
All right.
The finance corner.
So, in order to keep this as timely as possible with the federal government shutdown over the change in the ACA funding back to the levels that it was at prior to 2021, which I think is not well known. And I don't want to get political here, but the change that's being debated right now is the return to the original Obamacare. The original subsidies that were in place in 2011,
15.
whenever, 15?
I don't know. I made it up.
When sounds good to me. Whenever it went in place, there was subsidies up to, and here, let me share my screen and I'll show you what it's going back to. But the thing under debate right now is in 2021, it removed what has been called the subsidy cliff. So once your income equals, let me pull up the table of where it is today. So once your income, if you look at this table, it kind of lays out the different elements of, or the different levels of income. These levels are for a household of two, and they're all in percentages of the federal poverty limit. That's the acronym here, FPL. So under 100% of the federal poverty level, you're on Medicaid, which actually you probably don't want to be on because it's just not great insurance, and you're told to go to these establishments that are kind of third world looking. But anyways, once you get above 100% of the federal poverty level for a household of two, which is $21,150 of annual income, and that income is measured as by the modified adjusted gross income, which is very similar.
Maggie? What is it?
Magi is,
Magi.
I think, how it's
Yeah.
commonly referred to. But it's really essentially your adjusted gross income from your tax return, plus some little things that most people don't have, like foreign dividends, and it's a little bit adder to your adjusted gross income but for 90-some% of the people, it's essentially your adjusted gross income. So what you'll see here is the different ranges of where you sit from an annual income relative to the federal poverty level, and then how much in this third column of your annual income you're expected to participate, that you would pay towards the second cheapest silver level plan in your area. So for us, that's Boulder County in Colorado, probably a little bit higher income than most of the country, probably a lot higher. But anyways, these are the limits. So in 2021, they removed this last row that said, once you get above 400% of the federal poverty level, you're only expected to pay 8%. That's the rule that went in place in 2021. That's expiring in 2025. And that's why the government's shut down right now, is because the Democrats want the return of the COVID level subsidies. The Republicans want it to go back to what it was prior to COVID. The big thing here is, A, pay attention to this number right here. Once your modified adjusted gross income goes above 84,600 starting in 2026, unless the laws changed, you will get no help from the federal government towards your medical insurance. So that's kind of a big deal when you look at, what I was paying when I stopped working in 2021. I didn't know any of this, and so I just by default went on a COBRA plan, which is essentially I keep my former employer's health insurance, but I pay 100% of the bill. My wife and I were paying $21,000 a year, and this is back in 2021, so it's gone up since then. $21,000 a year just in premiums. So if we never went to the doctor, we paid $21,000. After that, once we started going to the doctor, we still had deductibles in place that we were going to pay above and beyond that $21,000. We've been able to, by manipulating where we held money, and so for the first 5 years, hopefully we can continue, but I think we're going to run out before I reach Medicare age. We've been able to manipulate our income quite a bit such that our subsidy for health insurance has almost been 100%. I mean, we've paid next to nothing for the last 3 years for health insurance.
So Kirk, can you explain how retirees, what types of ways can you adjust or modify your income?
So a typical retiree, the vast majority of their savings sits in a qualified tax delayed account, like a 401k or an IRA. Any money you take out of those is 100% reportable as income. And so that's from a tax standpoint or a health insurance subsidy standpoint, that's the least favorable place to get your money from because it dollar for dollar shows up on your tax return. We were able to, prior to retiring, sell a second piece of real estate we had, and therefore we paid a lot of tax the year before we retired on the sale of that house. So we paid tax, but we were able to put a lot of it post-tax on the sideline such that we could spend money the first 5 years of our retirement without looking like we had any income. So for the first couple of years, we were able, yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, we had money to spend, it just wasn't income.
Right. Yeah, that was already taxed. So it's not like you're cheating. You already paid tax on the money. You just have money.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for the first couple of years, I just did some Roth conversions to make my income look like it was high enough to not be in Medicaid and get the most amount of subsidies. The other trick that I think a lot of people miss, it depends on your health level, but if you're a fairly healthy person, I would always downgrade from this, all of these subsidies or that the federal government will send you, or what you're expected to pay, is based on the cost of the second highest cost silver plan, which is a pretty decent health insurance plan. We have elected to downgrade to a bronze plan, which typically carries a higher deductible and a higher max out of pocket. But if you're someone who's in your 50s and relatively healthy, who doesn't plan on going to the doctor a lot, which kind of blew up in our face a little bit because my wife has had 2 surgeries and she'd never had a surgery her entire life since we retired. But anyways, you get a much cheaper monthly premium by going to a bronze plan with a higher out-of-pocket maximum should you have a lot of care. The math I've done still says it's better off to go with the bronze plan. But we've essentially
with the bronze plan, you found that even if you had medical stuff, it was less expensive because you're paying such a small premium that even if you max out your deductible, you were still under that price.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now that is where I've been. So I wouldn't pretend that I've done the math on if I was paying the entire premium, Does that math still work out? I don't know the answer, but because
Yeah.
the government was paying such a large portion of my premium, uh, I could pay the entire deductible and the entire max out of pocket and still not get anywhere close to what I was paying when I
Right.
was doing the Cobra.
Yeah.
So the takeaway from this is make sure that if you have the flexibility, limit your reportable income below 84,600 so you get some level of subsidy from the government.
I think the
Because
moral of the story, right, is if you retire early, you have to really start thinking about saving cash and putting less in your IRA and 401k and actually putting more in cash or a Roth, depending on how you look at it. But it's really got to build up kind of a some people call it a Superman account. Some people it's really just a post-tax account, right?
Yeah, it gives you so much more flexibility. In this case, my first year and a half of retirement, the number one expense on our budget was health insurance premiums.
For sure.
By
Mine was
far.
this year for sure.
Yeah.
And so when we were able to reduce it to almost zero, it's like, wow, it opens up a lot of budget. So Mark, to your point, having those after-tax monies is extraordinarily beneficial here. But even if you took this off the table, you open up your freedom on things like being able to do some Roth conversions so that when you turn 73 or 75, depending on how old you are, you don't have as high of required minimum distribution out of those tax deferred accounts, which can push you into higher tax brackets than you want to be and even higher distributions than you need at that point in your life.
Yeah.
So just having that after-tax money just gives you some tremendous flexibility, especially up until age 65. Once you get on Medicare at 65, you really the limits or the income levels where you have to pay additional premiums for Medicare are very high relative to the numbers you're seeing on the screen here. I mean, I think the first step up in IRMA, which is the kind of supplemental charge for Medicare, the first step up is at something like $220,000 of income.
Yeah.
Versus, the top end here is 84.6.
Awesome.
Good stuff.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you, Kurt. That's one of the things we want to do on this podcast is we really want to dig deep into certainly some of the financial issues and hurdles, how to prepare for retirement, then how to properly spend your money to reduce your tax, your tax liability. So we're going to be talking about some of those things. We also are going to talk about, what happens when suddenly you don't have the same identity. You've left your career. You now don't, when people say, what do you do? And you say, oh, I'm retired. Well, is that what you're about now? Is you just do nothing? And so anyways, struggling and dealing with that's going to be one of the things we're going to discuss a lot. We're going to talk about, how we work out, how we take care of ourselves physically. We're going to talk about spiritual things and emotional things and how those things, how are we dealing with those things in our life? Particularly, in the last chapter of your life, how do you try to make sense of your own life? And so anyways, we'd love to hear from the comments. If you guys have any thoughts or ideas or things you'd like to hear us discuss, we'd love to go there. Guys, any final
comments are going to be silly. I mean,
right.
They're all going to be wonderfully nice, though, because what I hear is that when you're anonymous on the internet, you always give uplifting, positive comments.
Great
That's what I
point.
hear.
Yeah, excellent. All right, boys. Anything else before we call it a wrap on episode 1?
I learned from Kurt that I didn't know the government was shut down. I thought that was interesting.
Yes.
I can tell, Mark, that you have elected to turn off the news in retirement, and I can appreciate that. And from our text string, I certainly say that it speaks to your texting. You never text.
I know. I'm on Yahoo Malaysia. I know everything going on in Malaysia.
Well, thanks, guys, for getting together here on the first episode, and I think that's a wrap.
All right.
Oh yeah, Mile High Salute. Go Broncos.